everybody, good to be back with you. So let's talk about Venus through the composite houses today and what that shows us in composite charts. Venus in a composite chart is how we blend our personal paradigm of beauty and appeal, how we blend our tastes, our ideas of leisure, how we share with each other, our preferences for pleasure, our preferences for everything, our sensibilities, how do we blend our physical ideals, the things that we value, what it is that we value, what is it that gets our attention. How do we blend our preferences for comfort and satiation of the senses? Venus is really our offering in the face of something that we appreciate, that we find beautiful or valuable, what we patronize because we appreciate it, because we find it to be something that there's a sort of a rewarding return. Venus is also what we are willing to spend our time and our attention and our money on, because it strikes us the right way. It strikes us in a way that we prefer, that we find to be in tune with what we want to see. So the house that Venus shows up in a composite chart is the context that the action of Venus is happening in. So the house is the types of experiences that the blending of our sensibilities and our ideas of pleasure and our preferences and what we spend our money on and how we share, that is happening in the context of whatever house Venus is in. So it shows places that Venus will occur in, Venus action, the types of situations that the action of Venus, that the blended action of our preferences will occur in. So the house is the stage that the action happens upon. Houses are territories of meaning. It's where something is. So what is the planet, and where that is, the context for that particular action of that planet is always going to be the house. Venus in the composite first house is a very common place to have it in a romantic relationship. Very, very common. We appreciate each other physically. We find each other to be beautiful. There's a combined sense of what we want to see in each other. So the physical qualities that we both have are something that we can both agree on. There's a lot of agreeing on things that we will do, actions that we will take, things that we like. Our preferences in general are very well blended in the first house. What we see on the surface, the things that again are appealing to us, are very much in tune. So we can agree about foods and where to go out and what it is that we would like to go after, what turns us on, what gets us motivated. There's a lot of just shared activities, and what one would choose, the other one would also choose that as well. So it cuts down on disagreements about what to do and where to go, and things having to do with the action that we will take in life. So if we have difficult aspects to Venus, it can be very helpful to have it in the first house, because even though we have the action of Venus may be involved in some difficult archetypal combinations, say we have some difficult aspects to Pluto, or we have some difficult aspects to Saturn even. The fact that Venus is in the first house can bring an essential agreement about a lot of things, in spite of those difficult aspects. So it isn't one way or the other. It isn't that we have all this wonderful preferential agreement going on in the first house, or we have, just the burden of these difficult aspects. We can have these difficult narratives going on with the aspects, yet the relationship has many things in common. It offers both people an ease of agreeing on a lot of values and preferences, and that can make dealing with those harder, difficult aspects easier in itself. When Venus is in the second house in a composite chart, there's a lot of agreement over stuff, money, what we're going to collect, what's going to make us physically comfortable. So tastes, how we will decorate, what type of house we will live in, how we will design the garden, how we will beautify our lives. Very, very much in tune. It can be a more materialistic place to have a composite Venus. And if we have an overly materialistic kind of pairing, then this would contribute to that. But it's not bad in itself. It's a very natural place for Venus to be. I mean, Taurus Venus rules the second house naturally, so it's a way that will effortlessly combine where our money goes, what kinds of art do we want. So it could be a very useful position, and agreeing on investments and where we can appropriate what we earn. Very, very easy with Venus in the second house. When Venus comes into the third house in the composite chart, the sharing, the shared pleasure seeking, the sensibilities are very much centered around mental things and opinions. So there's shared values in the realm of opinions, what we think, how we learn, how we'll collect information, the types of facts that we'll focus on. It's a more cerebral Venus. It's not a very common house to have Venus in a romantic relationship. But there's a lot to share when it comes to world events, small talk. That's something that both people really like. We like conversation when Venus is in the third house, and we appreciate each other's point of view. We want to hear the other person's opinion. We'll patronize each other's opinion. Not patronize, it's not a bad thing. We'll patronize it. We'll find that the other person's ideas are something that we can applaud and that we can agree with, and they bring us a certain amount of pleasure in our own life. So we can feel very supported by the other person. We can feel that they appreciate our mind. We're allowed to have our opinions, and communication is encouraged. It's a very affable place to have Venus in a composite chart. When Venus comes into the fourth house in a composite chart, we share a lot of the same intimate preferences, the same needs for solitude or quiet, or just to have a few meaningful people around us. The way that we're seeking stability and safety and closeness is very much appreciated by the other person. So we can, have those shared nights sitting by the fire, shared quiet time. So we mutually enjoy home-centered, intimate activities. So a lot of the pleasures are going to be more close to home, or just between us, or more of a private type of deal. When Venus comes into the composite fifth house, the partners are able to fulfill a lot of each other's romantic ideas. It's a very exciting place for Venus to be. The fifth house is a very rough and tumble area of life. It's where we have risk occurring, sports occurring. There's a lot of adrenaline that occurs in the fifth house. So we have a lot of sharing in the exciting things of life. We find each other to be a source of excitement. So you have to look at other things in the composite chart when Venus comes into the 5th house. It can be a very intoxicating place to have it. Because we are in love with love, we are enjoying each other's company to the max, it can make it harder to determine if there's a real solid base of compatibility. You know, what are you really doing together? Because it's like we're having so much fun together. A lot of times couples won't have substance in the relationship that is really necessary for it to be an enduring relationship. So we could see Venus in the 5th house in more short-term relationships if we don't have other very real things or substantial things going on. So it can inspire romantic relationships in itself. But in relationships where we do have good content and reasonable compatibility, this is a great place to have Venus, because we want to do things together. We want to be active together. We want to go boating together. We want to go horseback riding together. Whatever it is that the other person finds to be fun, we find pleasure in that as well. When Venus comes into the 6th house in a composite chart, we have our sharing, our taste, our combined sensibilities and preferences coming into the house of service, of giving, of providing something. So it's very, very common for couples who have this composite Venus position to feel that they are having to serve the other person's preferences, physical needs, what their physical ideal is, what their pleasure seeking is. They are serving that by putting their own pleasure seeking on the back burner. So there's a take turns kind of a deal when we have Venus coming into the 6th house. There isn't a lack of love in the relationship when Venus is in the 6th house. It's more like we are willing to subordinate our own pleasure seeking so the other person can have their version of what they're seeking. So we do like to see each other in that Venus vein, that Venus mood. And a lot of how we are going to find pleasure is by seeing and watching the other person indulging themselves in what they find to be pleasurable. So there's a sacrificial kind of note to having Venus in the 6th house. Venus in the 7th house is a fabulous place for Venus to be in a composite chart. We agree on how we want to participate in the relationship itself. What are we looking to get out of the relationship? So the two people share a lot of preferences for each other. They like the way that the other person is. They like the way that the other person participates in the relationship with them. So we value each other very highly. We value the relationship itself. It is very easy to feel that the relationship itself is a source of pleasure. So the only negative or downside that could come with Venus in the 7th house is that we can turn to each other only for attention or fun or activities or pleasure. It could just become the two of us, and it can, become a nice club of two, but it can cut down on our life satisfaction in general if we aren't bringing in anything new from the outside. So as long as we don't just move off into a cave with each other and only pay attention to each other. It could be a wonderful, wonderful place to have Venus, as we agree on how we should have the relationship, what it should look like, and how we should participate in it. When Venus comes into the composite 8th house, the couple wants something from each other very, very deeply. The pleasure seeking that we're both experiencing comes somewhat at the expense of the other person. So we're very attracted. There is a great deal of desire that occurs, and it's very difficult to walk away from each other because there is such an investment, there's such an attachment that occurs when Venus comes into the composite 8th house. So there's this strong focus on fulfillment, and specifically on the other person as that vehicle to our fulfillment. So the two people are mutually getting something from each other. They're getting a payoff. So it's not as generous place for Venus to be in a composite chart. We can see more game playing, we can see some manipulation, we can see inappropriate attachment or obsession even occur. So look at what is in the natal charts. If we have Venus-Pluto stuff in one or both of the natal charts, or even Moon-Pluto stuff, and then we have Venus coming into the composite 8th house, it can increase the likelihood that we will have more of a selfish interaction between the two of us. Composite Venus in the 9th house is a fine place to have it. There's a lot of agreement about beliefs and intellectual ideals, and life view. Values can be very much in common. Ideas about expansion and growth and what we find exciting and exhilarating, that could be very, very much in common. Some couples can find that it is a less personal place to have Venus, that there is more a love of cerebral things, or each other's mind, or shared philosophies. It isn't an automatically romantic placement. It does encourage a lot of communication and a lot of the same enjoyments of culture, like what types of cultural offerings may be there. Like we'll patronize the symphony together, the ballet. If we like modern art, we'll find a modern art museum that the both of us can agree on. So we effortlessly share in abstract ideas, bigger ideas about the world, belief systems, growth and expansion. It is not an ooey gooey placement of Venus, because we're more, about books and about the mind and about exploring mental things. But there is a lot that is in common. There's a lot of shared values, and the worldviews can be very much a source of pleasure for the two people, the combination of that worldview. So we do tend to uphold each other's opinions and support each other's ideas, and that could be a very good thing. When composite Venus is in the 10th house, we have the blending of preferences when it comes to success, climbing the ladder, recognition, arriving. So we can find each other to be very useful when we have composite Venus in the 10th house. The way that we both handle money and what we want is very much in tune with how we would like to be seen and recognized. So we can have a very successful working relationship. In romantic relationships, we do see that the other person is very valuable when it comes to bringing us the kind of life that we want to have. Or we can see them as like a stepping stone to what it is that we want to get. That the way that they are is in tune with what we are building. So there's a lot of agreement on the kind of success that is going to make us feel good as individuals within the partnership. So it's like the other person has what we need to feel recognized, to feel valid, to feel like we've shown up. So there's a lot of appreciation for each other when it comes to what the other one can provide. When Venus is in the composite 11th house, we find shared pleasure around how we are friends with each other, how we accept each other. It is a pleasure to spend time together. It is a pleasure to spontaneously engage in life together, to be crazy together. So we get to feel like we get to be ourselves in each other's presence. We get to let our hair down. We get to make mistakes. We get to do what we want to do because the other person probably wants to do the same thing. We seek the same kind of companionship when we have Venus in the 11th house. We don't mind going into the unknown together. We don't mind exploring what could be. So it's a very exhilarating, inspiring place to have Venus. When the composite Venus is in the 12th house, we can have some irrational underpinnings occurring in the relationship. Very often, we trigger each other's unknown or repressed or taboo kind of sexuality in a way that is not compatible or appropriate with the kind of relationship that we have. So it's like the hidden mysteries of our own self can come to the surface, and then we have to figure out what we're going to do with that. The hidden pleasures that we have, the hidden Venus qualities that we have, the hiddenness in both of us is combining in a way where we're going to find out or have some of that hiddenness surface, but it's not always going to fit in to the larger context of what the relationship is. So we see a lot of affairs, hidden goings on in the relationship when we have Venus in the 12th house, because it is an affair inspiring place for Venus to be. So the relationship is motivated by or driven by unknown or unseen forces between the two people. And we can often see Venus in the 12th house show up as a erupting need. So, we've been relating to each other either as friends or co-workers, or it could be a platonic relationship or a professional relationship. Any relationship that is not romantic. We can be relating to each other that way. And then we can have these desires, these physical appreciation for each other. We could find each other to be beautiful. That can erupt from under the surface. And then we have to figure that into the relationship. So what appears to be straightforward or obvious or on the surface is greatly affected by what hidden kinds of desires the other person inspires within us. So what is repressed or mysterious or unknown does tend to be the motivation for having a desire spring up for the other person. So our desires, what becomes obvious feelings to us, are more an indication of what we have yet to come into contact with within ourselves. So it's like the emerging desires and feelings that sort of just come up out of nowhere. That's very useful to trace back, to really investigate our own psychology and our own selves. It's more of a symptom, the feelings and the eruptive sexuality and the overwhelming desire that can come more up out of nowhere. It's more indicative of who we are personally, rather than descriptive of a highly compatible match between two people. So there's a lot of complexity that comes into a relationship when we have Venus coming into the 12th house. And we want to make sure that we have a high degree of compatibility and some very practically matched values and ideas about the world in other areas if we have Venus coming into the 12th house, because it is often going to be a romantic relationship that is more a vehicle for self-knowing, rather than a placement where Venus is very enduring. So I hope that was helpful and enjoyable. If it was, please subscribe to my channel and like my video. I'm not currently meeting with clients right now, so I can concentrate on teaching full-time and creating content full-time, but check my schedule into the future. I'm sure that it'll open again at some point. And I do have a subscriber option on my website if you're interested in live chat sessions, question and answer videos, all kinds of different types of content over there. If you're interested in more, check me out over at my website, and I'll be back super soon. Bye-bye.